Welcome to episode 3 of Readers of the Lost Art. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Bobby. And today we are talking about The Red House Mystery by A. Milne. As you know, we are working our way through 100 Years of Murder, 120 Years of Murder, and we are now in the 1920s.
I said in that social media post that we were in the 1930s, but that's because I miscounted. It's really hard.
You're so close. You're so close. But it is the 1920s.
And A. Milne is the man who wrote Winnie the Pooh, which is why we chose this book.
So let's talk about A. Milne. The first thing that we need to talk about with A. Milne is the fact that I said so confidently, because I have believed so confidently in my entire life, that A. Milne is from Canada, and he's absolutely not. He's not at all. He is from England, so yet another British author.
We were so wrong. I think I texted you and I was like, Agatha Christie is also on this list. Like, we've never been more wrong. I have no idea why we said they were all American. We just decided that in our heart. Never questioned it. Like, I know Agatha Christie isn't American. Like, I know that. I don't know.
Who can fathom the mind of us? Because it's not me. So I am going to actually begin my introduction of A. Milne with my Clara Hugh poem.
Oh, yay. I'm so excited you brought one. I'm so excited this is a thing. We can post our Clara Hughs.
I'm sure people will be very excited about that. So here's my Clara Hugh, and it's going to give you a little bit of my overall feelings of the Red House Mystery in there as well. Okay?
Nice.
Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Alan Alexander Milne. His works immortalized on TV and film. Of the detective novel, he had no clue. Good thing he met Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, I think that sums up my feelings too. I read a review of this book that said they thought that it had Winnie the Pooh vibes, like Pony and Bill character were kind of like Pooh and Piglet.
I read that people see Tony Gillingham as like a grown-up version of Christopher Robin.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, I don't know, that kind of tracks.
Yeah,
He's kind of whimsical and just doing whatever. But anyway, so Alan Alexander Milne. What a terrible name. First of all, why would you do that to anyone? But
well, that's
it's
why
very
he goes
hard
by
to say.
AAA.
Yeah, he was first known as being a writer of humorist essays, think like a James Thurber type. He was the assistant editor of Punch magazine, which does that still exist? I should have looked that up.
I don't even know what that is.
It was like a collection of essays and things like that. Probably doesn't. But anyway, he loved mysteries. He said that there's never been a bad beer, which, okay, sure.
There has been. I've had them.
Right. He said there is no beer that is bad. They're just different preferences. He said, to me, there are no mysteries that are bad. I just have very interesting preferences. And like, yeah, AA. Yeah, that's true. Like all writers of the golden age of detective novels, he believed that the detective needed to be an amateur. You can't have like a police inspector. That's why it's never a police inspector that solves anything. It's always this rando man or woman who helps out. He wanted the reader to be able to feel like they too could solve this crime if they were there.
I did halfway through it, so.
He also believed that there had to be a Watson to play off of the Sherlock character, which
he tells us that in the book. So,
and he also felt when he wrote this book, I know you told me that you felt like it was very readable, and it is, and he does that on purpose. He feels like you got to get right to it. He said when readers are wondering whether the white powder on the cupcakes is ladies' makeup or some type of drug, we don't need to spend a lot of time like describing the scene. He said you got to get right to it. So he wrote it to be very direct on purpose. The book was written
very fast read.
Yeah, it is very, very quick. He got in there and got out. It was serialized in 1921, in August of 1921, and then the book was printed in 1922. It was a great success at the time. There were 12 printings over the course of 4 years.
Wow. The people starved for mysteries.
What are you doing? Sorry, that jingling was my dog. She was jingling around. Oh, he was also really well known for publishing a lot of plays. My favorite is The Ugly Duckling. It is a fairy tale play about a princess who had a spell put on her when she was born that only her true love would recognize that she's very beautiful and everybody else would think that she was very ugly.
Oh.
So it's this very cute story about this prince shows up and he's a little bit of a rogue, and I don't remember the rest of it, but it's very fun and cute. So if you ever get a chance to see an adaptation or a performance of The Ugly Duckling, you should go see it. So when he wrote The Red House Mystery, his publishers were all like, nobody wants to read mysteries AA. They want more humorous essays. And then after he wrote the Red House Mystery, he wanted to write nursery rhymes, which turned out to be when we were very young. They were like, no, nobody wants nursery rhymes. They want more mysteries. And so what we're learning here is the publishers just do not know what is up.
Yeah, that's been true for centuries, it sounds like.
Yeah. So he writes Winnie the Pooh, his first Winnie the Pooh book in 1926, which is the thing that he's really most well known for now, is his Winnie the Pooh books. Winnie the Pooh was named after a Canadian black bear named Winnipeg that was at the London Zoo. And perhaps that is why I thought A.A. Milne was Canadian, because Winnie the Pooh was based on a Canadian bear. Who can say? Because of his one detective novel, and he did only write the Red House Mystery, and then he was like, I'm done with this. He felt like I did what I wanted to do, and now I'm out. He did become a charter member of the Detection Club, which included E.C. Bentley, G.K. Chesterton, Agatha Christie, R. Austin Freeman, Baroness, I think it's Orczy, I don't know how you say her last name, and Dorothy L. Sayers.
I sent you a book that had, like, the stars of the book are mostly those people.
Yeah, which I think is interesting. I feel like maybe that should be one of our bonus episodes.
I was thinking so too. The book is called, we should say it so that we're not just, I don't remember what it's called. Hold on. It is called The Queens of Crime, and it is about the women that Bobby just listed.
Yeah.
And that
Dorothy,
club.
Is the club is part of it too?
I think so, because I think it's these women in this club going after, like, the men in this club and, like, trying to prove that they're better.
Interesting.
So I do think it would be good to read.
In the summary that you sent me, it was based on a true event in Dorothy L. Sayers' life.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that sounds fascinating.
Are we reading a Dorothy L. Sayers, or did we skip that?
I don't think we are.
That's
crazy.
That's
upsetting to me.
Well, we should have gone with Dorothy instead of Mary. I don't know if they were writing around the same time.
I don't think so. I know that I've got a bunch of Dorothy books on my TBR on Fable. So
I think Dorothy was an option for this decade, where we chose Milne instead because we were curious about, the Winnie the Pooh author. Because we also were trying to fit in Agatha Christie, which was hard, and Raymond Chandler. Like, we had a lot of big names that we had to fit in.
We did. I don't know. Maybe we'll... Sorry, I just felt a minor explosion. I don't know what that was about. Did I tell you? Months ago. Sorry. We got a quick little side note. Months ago, there was, on a Sunday morning, there was this, like, I heard this, like, explosion, like this big, like, boom, just one little boom. And I was like, what was that? And turns out somebody's house had exploded. Their gas tank had exploded or something.
No,
like
scary.
in the area. I know, it was crazy. Anyway, he never wrote another detective novel after this, but he did get into the Detection Club on the strength of this novel, which everybody loved at the time.
I didn't find it very compelling, but I think a person who loves a cozy mystery would read this today and be like, yeah, this hits.
I mean, there are some good things about it. I think the characters are so fun.
Yeah, but
I think, and part of the actually, I think I'll say this for when we talk about the story at the end. But there's kind of a reason why it is the way that it is.
Okay,
that's what I'll say, and not a good reason, but there is a reason.
Okay, is that all we have about A.A. Milne?
I mean, then he wrote the Winnie the Pooh books, and of course, he had a son named Christopher Robin. But like, we all know that.
I've actually never read the Winnie the Pooh books. When I was growing up, the Winnie the Pooh TV show was like my favorite, but those books were never really placed in front of me as a thing that I could read. And
the books are extremely charming.
Well, this book made me feel like maybe I should go back and read Winnie the Pooh, because even based on just this book, it did feel like he would be better writing something else. Like that perhaps mystery wasn't the genre for A.A. Milne. And it's good that he
I feel like this was so close to being a comedy.
Yeah.
But it didn't ever quite fully step into that realm of being, like, we didn't have enough ridiculous situations. We had ridiculous characters, but we didn't have enough of a ridiculous situation for those characters to, like, play in.
I know that I had said this in text message, but we do need to address the fact that, like, Shawn Spencer is just all over the place.
Is Shawn Spencer based off of every single detective that has ever existed? Because I do feel like the Shawn Spencerification of these mystery novels needs to be, like, tracked.
Right. I agree.
Because I see him everywhere.
Yeah. I know, it was crazy because he was definitely in the last book, and here he is again.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the people who created Psych were huge fans of like mystery novels, and they just took like distilled all of the key components. But the Shawn Spencerification of the 100 Years of Murder does need to be tracked on our murder board. So I am going to be making a note of that and adding it to our Is Raymond Chandler Pro-Capitalism, which is currently our only note.
Which we will find out because I think our next book is Raymond Chandler.
It is. The Big Sleep, right? We went with the famous one. Okay.
I do want to look up and see what my Dorothy books were that we were going to read, that we were thinking about reading and then we chose not to because we were crazy.
I know. It does feel like a real letdown of the team to not have one of her books on here.
Strong Poison was the one I was really gunning for.
What year would it have been?
1930s. So we did Raymond Chandler instead of Dorothy.
Well, that was a choice, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, Raymond Chandler's also big, so it kind of feels like...
Well, it's one of those things that you kind of mentioned. This is the golden age of mystery. So this is where all of the big ones are. So should we get into the summary? There's not much to summarize here.
Right, yeah.
So Mark, how would you say his last name? Mark Alblet?
I pronounced it Ablet or Ablet.
Let's go with Ablet. So Mark Ablett owns the Red House. He has his first cousin, Kaylee, lives with him, Matthew Kaylee. And Kaylee kind of takes care of all of his affairs. He takes care of the house. He takes care of his finances. He is just his man that does everything. And it sounds like Mark Ablett is he just loves attention, and he loves parties, and he loves playing, and he loves inviting people over. So at this Red House, they often have guests. So when the novel opens, they are having this, not dinner party, but like this weekend
house
gathering. A house party. A weekend gathering of friends. And those friends go to play golf. But the morning before they're going to play golf, Mark sits at the table and he reads this letter. And he says, "Oh no, my brother Robert is coming from Australia. He's a horrible person. This is so upsetting. He'll probably be here when you get back from your golf trip." And so the others go off to play golf. And while they are at golf, there's a shot that rings out. And Anthony is our kind of like main detective. He is like coming up the lawn to visit his friend who was part of this like golfing trip. So he's like coming up the lawn, and he hears the shot, and he hears Kaylee yelling for someone to let him in. And that's kind of like where the story and the mystery opens. And Tony, they constantly change what he's called between Anthony and Tony. So Tony and Kaylee, they make their way into this room where the shot was, and it turns out that Robert is dead. He's been shot between the eyes. So, his face is all messed up. Then the police get involved, and that's really the whole plot. They're just trying to figure out who shot Robert. There was Elise is what's it called? Like a maid? Not a maid. Is it a maid? I don't know.
She's a chambermaid.
There's a chambermaid who heard Mark say something in the room with Robert. I think he said like, "Haha, now it's my time." And so that is the chambermaid gives that evidence to the inspector. Mark has disappeared from the room. So after the shot, Mark is not there. The only person in this room is Robert. And they're trying to figure out what happened to Mark. Where did he go? And then like, did he shoot Robert? So the prevailing theory from all of Mark's friends is that Mark accidentally shot Robert and then ran away because he got nervous and scared.
Well, something you should know about Robert, though, is that I don't know, did you say this? That he has borrowed a lot of money from Mark over the years?
I don't think I said that he borrowed a lot of money. I said that he was a bad dude.
Yeah. And he also from Australia, so everybody's a little bit prejudiced against him because of like, well, nobody goes to Australia unless they've got something that they're trying to get away from,
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a time when a lot of like criminals are sent to Australia or like people who were sick.
What a weird thing to do.
Yeah. So there's a lot of prejudice against Australia in the book, but we don't ever really see Robert. He interacts with a maid when he like comes into the house, and that's really the only interaction that we see. The maid is like, "Yeah, I can tell he was bad news," and she kind of like tells that to everyone, which is weird because there's a lot of time devoted to that maid, and she never really, we have a whole scene of her with like Mrs. Stevens, and they're like in Mrs. Stevens' room, and then we never really see them again.
Right. Yeah.
They just kind of like disappear.
All of these character descriptions so I could keep track of all of the names, and like none of them matter. The one thing about Elsie, though, or not Elsie, it's Audrey is the one, the housemaid who lets him in.
Yes.
And she's like, oh, he's such a bad dude. And she goes to try to find Mark after she lets him in, and she can't find him.
Yeah.
But then Kaylee says, oh yeah, Mark came down while you were looking for him, and he went in to meet with Robert.
And then we have Elsie's evidence that Mark was in that room.
Yeah, so she overhears him talking. And she's like, it was for sure Mark's voice because he has a very distinctive voice.
So Tony arrives. He had been planning to see his friend Bill, who was part of the house party that was there. But after they find this dead body, they decide they need to send everyone away except for Tony, because he is now going to be part of this inquest that happens eventually. And he's going to have to give evidence because he's one of the people that found the body. He heard the shot, all this other stuff. And they decide to let Bill stay because Bill is Tony's friend.
I thought it was super, super weird that they immediately wanted to send everybody away. I was like, that's sus. Isn't that a little sus? Because, like, I know that none of them were present at the time of the murder, but, like, wouldn't you still want to get their testimony about, like, you know, was Mark acting weird leading up to? And, of course, it turns out there's a reason why Kaylee hurries to send everyone away.
Yeah, call that clue number 1. Again, I feel like it's silly of us to say that we're going to spoil the book because it's obvious that we're going to spoil the book, right?
Yeah.
But we're going to spoil this book.
Can't talk about it, but yeah, we're going to tell you the whole thing. And the thing is that there's not really that much to tell because
that really is the whole setup of the book. They do investigating, and it's kind of just Bill and Tony hanging out,
right?
running
and it's like
all
the
around.
The mystery isn't who killed. Like, who did the murder? That's not the real mystery, because the first suspect that we ever have that Tony has is the murderer.
Yeah.
The real mystery is
why?
Who's the victim?
Yeah.
Right? Which, you know, once you realize who the victim is, then it all kind of falls into place. But then the thing is, well, I guess we should back up and not talk too much about the mystery. So the setup of the mystery is that the door to the study is locked.
Yes, the door to the study is locked.
At the time, like, you would have like a key. You'd have to have a key on both sides of the door to be able to lock the door. And so there was this whole question of, is the key on the inside or on the outside? And
so the thing I feel is important to know about Tony is that, like Shawn Spencer, he has an eidetic memory.
Yeah.
Like, he can just kind of close his eyes and he's back in the moment. Like, he doesn't mention where the keys are when he's coming through the room and, like, you know, helping Kaylee try to open the door. But later we find out that he had seen keys on the outside of the door. So he knows that some of the keys were on the outside of the door. But this one, you know, there is no key there, so they think that Mark had it on the inside and he locked himself in and then he ran out. There's an open window. The mystery that they tell us that Tony is solving is what happened between Mark and Kaylee, and then, like, where did Mark go? Or not Mark and Kaylee, Mark and Robert. And then Tony is suspicious of Kaylee because when they go around the house, it was kind of, I wish I had like a blueprint of this house, because I was like trying to figure out what happened, because Tony tells us that Kaylee took the long way round. So instead of running the most direct route to the window to get into the room where the dead body was, he goes like a longer way and he's running really quickly, and he thinks that is suspicious. And that's what gets Tony, like, interested in this case.
Yeah, like, something's not quite right. And the thing is that something that they made note of, you know, the victim is irrelevant. Like, it doesn't matter who the fact that we have no emotional connection to the victim, that's part of the thing, is that because this whole thing is just supposed to be a fun game. Yeah. Which is why Bill is, like, having the time of his life once Tony, like, recruits him
to be the Watson.
This is life. This is what real living is. And he's just having a great time. But then he's kind of has a pause, like, well, I guess I shouldn't say that because someone is dead. But, like, I'm having the best time. But that's the thing, is that it's just supposed to be a fun game.
Yeah, and Tony says, I have to have a Watson. Like, you have to be my Watson. And they call it a Watson. Like, so they're, like, playing a game of Sherlock Holmes and Watson. And Tony will bounce his idea ideas off of Bill, and Bill will get all excited. And they are just having a really nice time, which is,
it's like they're LARPing. They're LARPing as Sherlock and Watson, and they're just having the best time doing it.
Another Shawn Spencer trait, they tell us in the beginning that Tony changes careers like every month. He just finds a new career. And now he's trying on detective.
Yeah. He's like, this seems fun. I like this.
There was an interesting note that made me think of something we'd talked about in the past about amateurs. He talks about how it's bad that he's an amateur because he didn't look at... Oh, here it is. It's very hampering being a detective when you don't know anything about detecting, and when nobody knows that you're doing detection, and you can't have people up to cross-examine them, and you have neither the energy nor the means to make proper inquiries. And in short, when you're doing the whole thing in a thoroughly amateur, haphazard way. Which I thought was interesting because we've talked before about like amateurs bring a new kind of insight to the case. They don't have to do things by the book, and so that's why an amateur is the best detective, because they can bring their creativity. They're not making assumptions about things. But he's like, no, being an amateur is really hampering me here. So yeah, so the whole book is just him and Bill kind of running around, having a good time. There's a whole scene where Tony makes Bill go swimming, which was very Shawn and Gus coded.
Yes. He's like, I'm not getting in that. You do it.
Like, you go swim for the evidence, because he believes that Kaylee is going. So he thinks Kaylee's up to something. The whole thing, the whole time, we're just investigating Kaylee. That's the only suspect.
Yeah.
The whole time. And Mark is, like I said, gone. So Tony thinks that Kaylee is going to drop some evidence in the lake, because the lake has just been, what do they call it, dragged?
They're about to drag the lake
drag it.
looking for evidence.
Yeah.
And then after they drag it, he's like,
and don't find anything.
Well, let's back up just a smidge.
Sorry.
Because they discover, and because this is on my bingo board, they discover an underground secret tunnel.
Oh, yeah, they do.
That runs from the house to like this game shed in the back. And it like comes up through this croquet chest thing. Like it opens up and then it goes down into a secret tunnel. And they discover pretty early on that there is a secret tunnel. And so Tony believes that Mark may be hiding in the secret tunnel, or that
dead
Kaylee,
in the secret tunnel.
Yeah, he also wonders if, at first he's like, he's hiding, but then he's like, actually, I think he might be dead. And then he's like, Kaylee may be pulling some evidence from the secret tunnel and then hiding that in the lake. So he's looking, because there is in the underground tunnel, which they do find the entrances in the library, and they do get in there, and there's like a secret door in the secret tunnel, but they don't have a key to it. So they've got to find the key into the secret room, and maybe that's where Mark is, or maybe that's where the body is, or maybe that's where evidence is. And so they're so they think that Kaylee's going to get whatever this is, and he's expecting it to be the body. He's like, I'm pretty sure he's going to dump Mark's body. But then when Kaylee gets out there, they're like, they put these fake bodies in their beds so that if Kaylee goes in and checks on them,
and that's
there
like
will
a
be dummies.
Whole thing. There is a lot
whole
of
thing.
Words devoted to this.
I know. And they are spying on Kaylee after the dragging of the lake, and they're watching him, and they have this whole plan where you're going to be in this tree and I'm going to be in this tree, and we're going to use this fence to like calibrate where he's gonna, so like, and they're counting the fence poles or something, and it's like a whole thing. So he does go out on the boat, and he drops something. He drops like a small bag into the water.
It's just a bag.
Yeah, and Tony's like, well, that's not a body, so is it part of a body? What's going on?
Is it
so
the
they
gun?
Go out. Yeah.
He's
like, I'm expecting it to be a gun or a key or the body, but it's not the body. So he's like, but a gun or a key wouldn't need to be, like, you wouldn't have to put it in a bag to weigh it down. You could just throw the gun or the key. So like, it can't be any of those things. So he goes and he sends, I was about to say Gus, but it's not Gus. He sends Bill into the water to dive for it. And Bill pulls up this like leather bag. Oh, his coffee arrived?
Yes, everyone. My Mother's Day coffee and donut has arrived. I'm going to save the donut for later. I'm not going to go to Munch Town while we're recording. sounds for a different podcast. All right, take me away. Where were we?
Okay, I'm just going to start with, so he makes Bill dive into the water and he pulls up this bag, and inside the bag he finds all of the clothes that Mark was reported to have been wearing when he disappeared, including the underwear.
Yeah, so they find the underwear, and Tony's like, why would the underwear be in there? That's crazy. Why would he? Because one of the theories, so the plot device almost is Tony coming up with theories, like Bill and Tony coming up with theories and then just kind of disproving them. And they even talk about that at the end. Like, they're not solving for X by solving for X. They're just like plugging numbers into X and seeing what sticks. So one of the theories is that Mark shot Robert and that Kaylee is trying to help Mark escape. So he's getting rid of the clothes. Like, he told the officers, yes, he's in this brown suit. And now he's trying to get rid of the clothes so that the officers think he's wearing that brown suit. But really, he was wearing a blue suit.
One of the major problems with that theory, though, that Tony points out is that, first of all, the key thing. He's like, okay, so if you're trying to tell me that Mark locked himself into the office but had told Kaylee, hey, be on standby just in case Robert causes trouble. He's like, okay, so he tells you to be on standby, but then he goes into the office and locks the door so that if he gets in trouble, you can't help him.
Right.
He said, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for him if this is a premeditated murder. So, like, if locking the door makes sense if this is a premeditated murder, he's like, but nothing about the murder makes sense for premeditated because it would be so easy to catch him. He said, you know, if you want to kill him, you have to make it look like an accident, and there's nothing about this that looks accidental. If he did accidentally shoot him because Robert brings the gun and threatens Mark, and then there's a scuffle, and then Mark accidentally shoots him, which is what the predominant theory is. He said it doesn't make sense for Mark to run away. Yeah. Because it was just an accident. He's like, we can understand him losing his head, but like nothing else that he's doing makes a lot of sense. He said also, you know, when you go look in like the bushes and everything outside the window, he's like, you don't really see any signs of disturbance. So he said, it's not really, he's like, it just, nothing adds up, you know?
One of their theories also is that Kaylee said he would cover for Mark, but then actually didn't. Because Kaylee, it turns out, we find out later that Kaylee and Mark are in love with the same woman.
I really feel like he should have dropped that. There should have been a hint of that earlier. Just a little minor hint. All we knew was that there was a girl in the village that Kaylee was into, but we didn't have any evidence that Mark was also into the same girl.
You couldn't have solved this crime prior to Tony solving it. But you can solve it when Tony solves it.
Yeah, like you can follow along with him and like not be surprised at anything that gets revealed. Right. One of the things that does get revealed that kind of leads Tony to believe what he ends up believing is that Mark, the day before he reads the letter to all of his house guests, had gone to visit this girl and her mother. This is Mrs. Norbury and Angela Norbury, the daughter that he's into. Can I count
her as a crazy mother? She doesn't have a huge part in this, but if I don't count her as a crazy mother, I don't get anything on my bingo board.
I don't know that she was crazy, though. I think she's conniving. Got like she is conniving. She's got like a Mrs. Bennett vibe about her because she's really desperate to get her daughter married off.
Especially to Mark specifically, because he's got a nice house that she can live in.
Right. She wants the rich husband and I think what I read was that both of these men like Angela, and Angela didn't like either of them. Yeah. Like, she didn't want either. She's like, I don't want to be part of any of this. So Mrs. Norbury had really been pushing for her daughter to marry Mark, and Mark had gone to visit her on the Monday, I think. So all of this goes down on a Tuesday. He had gone to see her the day before and specifically brought up what a terrible person his brother is.
I also thought that was suspicious.
Yeah. And Tony's like, hey, why would he do that when he didn't even know at that point, supposedly, that his brother was coming? He said, well, he must have known before he announced it to everybody that his brother was coming. So what's the deal? So one of the pieces of evidence that was in the bag was actually the letter that Mark had read out to everybody that Tuesday morning. And there's no
weird
like
that
postmark
they could
or
still
anything.
read it because it was at the bottom of the lake, but I just let that go.
Like maybe the bag is like waterproof. Maybe that's because it was supposed to be like an oiled leather bag, I think is what they said. So I don't know.
A very impressive bag that they had.
Right. It hadn't been down there very long, but it does kind of feel a little sus that this letter was just perfectly preserved. So I don't know. Whatever. So he starts thinking, okay, he knew ahead of time that his brother was coming. The letter is starting to feel like a setup, like it wasn't really real. And we're starting to get an idea that like Mark is up to something. Like there's something going on here. So we're leaning more towards, okay, Mark killed his brother. Of note is that when they finally get into the office, Kaylee is the one who identifies the body as Robert. He says, oh, thank goodness it's not Mark, it's Robert. That's important.
Before halfway through the book, I was like, I don't know what else happened between Mark and Kaylee, but for sure Mark is dead and Kaylee killed him. There was no question in my mind. I didn't, whether or not the Robert thing, I thought that was some sort of setup. So but I wasn't sure what the actual setup was. But I was like, Kaylee for sure killed Mark. That much I know. So
I didn't feel, about halfway through, I started to suspect that Robert wasn't dead. That wasn't Robert. It was actually Mark that had been shot. And which, spoilers, is what it turns out to be.
Yeah.
Once
I thought that
find
several
out,
times, too, because they were very clear that he had been shot through the eyes and that, like, the face was kind of messed up.
So as it turns out, both of the men were in love with the same woman. That Kaylee actually had resented Mark for a long time. Mark actually wasn't that good of a man.
The part that Kaylee had resented him for a long time, I was like, you gave me no clues to that. I knew about the woman.
I felt it. I kind of felt it. I felt like Kaylee didn't really like him, but it was like a weird sort of relationship because Mark was like 40 and Kaylee is 28.
Yeah.
So when we find out that Mark had like sort of semi-adopted Kaylee when he was very, very young because he specifically wanted like a protege.
Yeah.
I was like, this feels weird.
I also got the vibe. Like, I did get the vibe. I was like, Kaylee, like, there's no way that Kaylee likes him because he has to do everything for him. Like, and it doesn't seem like he's getting thanked for this role.
Yeah, Mark seems to be a very unlikable person. Like, he's so overdramatic, and the way that he got very upset when people like didn't follow through with the plans that he had created, and just little things like that. I'm like, he doesn't seem super great as a human.
It seemed very much so that no one actually liked him, but they liked what he could give them. Like, all of those people that were at that house party, they didn't really care whether or not they would be friends with Mark. They cared that Mark continued to invite them over. And it is revealed that one of the people in this house party will no longer be invited over anymore, Mrs. Norris.
Yes, who is an actress.
So she dresses up as a ghost because there's like this ghost story at the Red House and scares Mark, and that embarrasses him.
Right.
And so it's revealed that she'll never be invited back. And this is revealed pretty early, that she embarrassed him, and that is something you cannot do to Mark.
Because this is what leads them to figuring out that there's a secret passageway. Because they're like, how did she get all the way out to the place where she was supposed to be haunting without anybody seeing her? And that is what makes Tony suspect that there's some sort of secret passage, which would explain how Mark was able to disappear, because Tony had been walking up to the house at the time and didn't see anybody like escaping the house. That kind of lends into all of this. And we realize this is why Kaylee was so keen to get everybody out of the house immediately, because Mrs. Norris is the only one who knows about the secret passage, and there must be something in the secret passage. Of course, it turns out it's the clothes and all of that.
And another hint that, Kaylee doesn't like Mark is that he tells Mrs. Norris how to scare Mark on the green. Like, if he's grown up with Mark for 20 years now? Like, he's been with him or I guess it's been 10 years. So he's been with Mark for 10 years. So he knows that Mark doesn't want to be embarrassed in public. So, and he knows his personality. So the fact that he would like let this woman scare him and embarrass him, says a lot about how he actually feels about Mark to me. So.
And the fact that Mark is like petty enough to hold that against this actress.
Yeah.
For, to like cut her off from his good graces. And also the fact that nobody seemed particularly upset about what happens. They're all just like, oh no, that's so sad. And then that's the extent of their reaction to all of this going down.
I will say that that's the thing that made the mystery harder to read. Like, it's really easy to read in that the text moves very quickly. But I did not care.
I did not care about anything at all, ever, for any reason.
There are no, as you mentioned, there are no stakes to this mystery. It doesn't feel like anyone's in trouble. It doesn't feel like anyone's really upset about where Mark's gone. Like, they say that Kaylee's, like, worried about him, but you don't feel that. Like, the detective doesn't care.
Like, business as usual most of the time. He's just like, I got stuff to do, okay? So
I've got the red house to run.
Right.
And yeah, like, the detective doesn't feel any type of way other than, ooh, this is interesting and fun. Which is, that's true in a lot of psych cases, too. With Shawn Spencer, but it is a visual medium, so it's a little more engaging to watch.
Well, we care about Shawn is the thing. And I think that you could argue, like, well, we do kind of care about Tony, but I don't think we know him well enough, like, as a human.
Right.
We just know him in this one specific context. And if he decides to, like, get up and walk away from this, he's not losing anything, and we're not losing anything. Whereas with Psych, you have a relationship with Shawn that you've developed over the course of the show.
And Shawn has a relationship with the detective, so by proxy, you care about them doing the thing. But I did not care about this mystery. I was pretty confident that Kaylee killed Mark. I didn't really care how or why, So, like, I think I texted you and I was like, I'm pretty sure I've solved it, so.
Yeah.
Like, anything else, I'm just not really sure that.
I think it was just like, we had the overall vibe of what had happened.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, well, surely Kaylee can't be guilty because they're setting it up too early for Kaylee to be guilty. But no, he was guilty.
Yeah.
So what happens, I guess, is I think Kaylee convinces Mark to cosplay as his brother, as like a final hilarious joke.
For Mrs. Norris. Like, he wants to specifically get Mrs. Norris back for this prank that she pulled, and Mark is going to, as Robert, convince Mrs. Norris to give him money and just be like really horrible and awful to her.
We learn like after the inquest that
I have facts about the inquest, but
she does have inquest facts, so we're going to learn about that today. But after the inquest, we learned that Mark was like an actor, was like big in the theater, sort of an amateur, very dramatic, which we know he's dramatic, but now we know that like he's also playing in the theater and stuff, which could be another reason why he's got a little bit of a beef with Mrs. Norris, because she's professional and he's not. And because they talk about, oh, was Ms. Norris ever in the play? And they were like, no, she wouldn't be in this. She was too good for this. So then we learn that Kaylee's convinced him to dress up as his brother and like set up this whole thing. So that's why he goes and talks to Mrs. Norbury and talks about his brother, because he wants to really make this like a grand scheme.
And Mark is super committed to his art, and I respect that.
Yeah, he's committed to the bit. So he does the whole announcement at breakfast so that everybody's going to watch out for his brother coming. He leaves the house and goes and like he shaves. He had a beard that he shaves off so he looks more like his brother. He does like makeup and everything. So he's dressed up.
They even talk about him like kind of making his nails raggedy.
Yeah, he really got like into it.
And that's why he changed his full clothes. Like he got rid of his underwear too, because he was going to wear the underwear that someone from Australia would wear.
Yes, which, who knows what that means, but okay. Very suddenly specifically reminded of our Uber driver in Arizona.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, told us a lot about his underwear. So that was very exciting.
A lot.
So much more than we ever needed to know. But
underwear are very important to some people.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it was very important to Mark that he have the undergarments of an Australian man. So whatever those may be. But he had dressed up as Robert and, went into the maid, fools the maid who lets him in. And then Kaylee is the one who, out of jealousy and concern for Angela, who they are both in love with, shoots Mark. And then,
it also comes out that Mark is an alcoholic. And so that was part of Kaylee also hating him, that he was an alcoholic. He also hated he also hated Mark because Mark had denied helping his brother a couple of years earlier. All of this comes out in a letter, by the way. Yeah,
we get this letter from Kaylee at the end, and then we're led to believe that Kaylee takes his own life at some point. And so it's like, okay, well, I feel like there have been too many, every single mystery, nobody gets punished for anything. Which, it just seems weird that we're 3 for 3 on nobody gets punished.
Well, it was also weird because, like, the reason that Kaylee writes Tony this letter is that Tony writes Kaylee a letter, and he's like, I think you did it. And I think that Robert is Mark, and I'm going to send his teeth to the dentist, and we're going to identify him. And so Kaylee writes this long letter that explains everything that he did, all of this stuff that Bobby just said. It's all in that letter. So it all comes out in a single chapter that is only Kaylee's letter. And it just tells us everything from start to finish. It's like, and some of that stuff we couldn't have guessed. Like, we couldn't have guessed that Mark was an alcoholic. We couldn't have guessed that Mark had wronged Kaylee in the past, specifically related to his own brother. I did think it was weird that they hadn't set up the alcoholic stuff in the book, because it's not...
Like, we should have gotten... Like the relationship, they should have given us clues along the way. Just, like, a little something.
Yeah, like there was an empty bottle of brandy in his room, right? Or, like, the maids didn't notice that their boss was an alcoholic, or that because it wasn't like he had been an alcoholic for years. They said that this was kind of like a new development. So did the maids not, like, notice a change? Because it would be hard to believe that they hadn't noticed that their boss had started to turn into an alcoholic. Like, that's just, it was weird that this was the first time that it was mentioned.
Yeah. I was looking up forensic dentistry, as one does, because when Tony's like, starts asking about the dentist, I was like, wait a second. What's going on here? Like, is he about to do what I think he's about to do? Because I was sort of convinced that, forensic dentistry was sort of a recent thing. It's not. It first starts in 1193 in India.
1193, good God. Wow.
A victim was identified by his false teeth.
Wow, they've really been solving crimes for a long time, huh?
Really have been, yeah. So that's not a new thing. It was first used as a court case in 1814 in Scotland.
Well, let's talk about what an inquest is, because this is our second book that's had an inquest. And I had said that we have something similar, kind of like a grand jury, and that is true. They are very similar, but what they do is kind of different. So apparently an inquest is specifically to decide the facts of how a person died. So if there is, like, so they present all of the evidence to a jury, and it can include, like, we think Mark shot this person, and even if Mark was alive and sitting there, he would not be able to, like, put on a defense, because that's not what the inquest is for. It is solely to determine how a person died, and no one goes to jail at the end of it. So that jury could, like, hear all of the information and be like, Mark killed him. And then what would happen is that the prosecutor would file a case against Mark, and then Mark would be able to defend himself. So it is specifically to determine the facts of how someone died.
So if a grand jury, like, there's a question of, was this person poisoned, or did they die of, like, a heart attack, just for instance. If a grand jury determines that they die of a heart attack, then that doesn't go to trial, right? That would be, like, the end. Okay.
Yeah. Under our system, at this time there weren't jury trials in the UK. I don't know if there are now. Don't know anything about London law. So, but at this time there weren't jury trials. So this was the only time a jury was involved with a case, was to decide how a person died specifically. Like, so they're not even deciding, like, whether or not there's a warrant.
They do have jury trials, by the way.
Nice. Perfect. I thought they did, but they didn't at this time. So at this time, this was, like, the inquest was the only time that a jury was involved with the case. witness, and then the judge. I actually think that's why a trial by jury was put into our Constitution as one of our like main rights, because that wasn't something that was common at the time. But that's a side conversation, and someone who's more familiar with British law can say that that's incorrect. But this is what I read when I was like looking up, because this is our second book that's talked about an inquest, and I was like, well, we just got to figure out what an inquest is exactly. And so it is similar to a grand jury, but it's not exactly the same, because under our system, the prosecutor would convene a grand jury to say specifically, like to make an argument that Mark killed someone, and then they would determine whether or not there was enough facts for him to go to trial and for like a warrant to be issued for his arrest. But in an inquest, it is specifically to determine how a person died. Like that's the, like we convene grand juries for everything, but an inquest is specifically for how they died. It sounds like you don't have to have a, oh my God, words are so hard today. Which is good because we're doing a podcast. A suspect. Yeah. You don't even have to have a suspect. If someone dies kind of surprisingly, unexpectedly, you do the inquest to see if they think it was a murder, and then you can go on to get your suspect and take them to trial. So it's really just to determine why they died. How they died. What are our next steps?
So what happens in the case of there being no body?
I don't know.
They just skip the grand jury?
I think grand jury and inquest is different. They're similar but different. So a grand jury for us is for a suspect. You have a suspect.
Oh, okay. But
so that's the main difference.
An inquest is not.
Yeah. An inquest is, we're determining. So like if there is no body, but maybe there's like a crime scene, you could probably do an inquest. Did someone die? Like, does this level of blood mean that someone is dead?
It's like, do we continue with this, or do you think we should give up? Can you appeal?
And it seems like inquest is specifically for murder.
Yeah.
But so like if they're like, there's not enough evidence that there's been a murder here, then the inquest would result in, the trial not moving forward. There would be
Could you appeal that? Like if you really believe there was a murder and you think that the jury made a mistake, can you like say, hey, look at this again?
Well, it's hard to know because like we have rules against double jeopardy, but that's like actually if they've gone to trial. I think if you go up before a grand jury and you present a case and they're like, there's not enough evidence for you to go after this person, I think you can convene another grand jury and be like, I've got more evidence. So I think the double jeopardy only applies once they've actually been to trial. So it's probably similar in an inquest. A lot of our legal processes are borrowed from British law because, we kind of set up our system.
Parents.
Right. We set up our system in a way that models theirs. It seems very possible that if you had an inquest and they were like, no, there's not enough evidence that this was murder, this was suicide, or there was no murder, but then later you found a body, you could recall the inquest, present the same evidence and your additional evidence, and then the case could go on to trial.
Okay.
And there's no prejudice either. So if you have an inquest and they're like, Mark did it, he killed this person, and the inquest jury is like, yep, we agree, Mark is the murderer. There's no prejudice to that. So like Mark can still have his trial and put on his defense, and the fact that another jury decided that he did it, that like doesn't come into trial. That's not relevant or part of it.
So that's not like included as any sort of evidence that's presented to that jury.
Right. So you just get a chance to present your case, and then you'd have to follow the rules of evidence. Usually in things like an inquest and a grand jury, rules of evidence don't apply, but there are a lot of evidentiary rules that would control what you're allowed to present to the jury. That's why when you're watching those law shows and the lawyer stands up and he's like, objection, right? Like there wouldn't be objections in a grand jury or an inquest because there is no defense. So there's no one there defending anyone. It's just the prosecutor's show. And they can present whatever they want.
So it's like, can I take this to trial? Basically is the whole point of the grand jury.
Yeah.
All right. That's been Law Corner.
Enjoy. So now we know what an inquest is. And that is why Tony continues to stay at this house, because he heard the shot and he saw the body. So he's going to be presenting evidence at this inquest so that the jury can decide whether or not Robert was murdered by Mark.
Which he does do. He does present his evidence at the inquiry.
He does. Okay, I have a question on my bingo board. It's so off topic and irrelevant. I didn't get any bingos, or not bingos. I didn't get any squares. But one of mine is told in multiple perspectives. And this story kind of is, but I also don't think that one counts. Because I feel like for told in multiple perspectives to really count, it needs to be like
first person.
Yeah, and you have to like jump from.
Yeah, this was more of like a limited omniscient.
Yeah, because we get like Bill's perspective, but even if it was like a third person, if it was clear that this chapter was so and so, this chapter, I think that would count. But it doesn't count for this one. Man, I have not had good luck with my bingo board.
I've only gotten one for the past two. I got one for Trent's Lost Case in the Everybody Hated the Victim, and then I got one for this one, which was the Underground Tunnel. So I have a total of 4 now.
I have 4 as well, but I didn't get any from this one. I guess arguably I could give myself Locked Room Mystery because they say that it is that, but it's not really that as I think about it, you know?
Right. It's not an actual locked room because Kaylee had the key. So
and usually you think of locked room as like, and they're on the 7th floor, so there was no way to enter the window, and the door was locked, so how could anyone else have gotten in there? And it's like, well, there were French doors, there was like a hall with a window, like there was plenty of ways that other people could have got in here in this room, but they do call it a locked room mystery, but I don't think it counts.
I don't think it's, well, like I said, I don't think A.A. Milne really cared much about rules. He just was having a good time. So.
He was having a good time, and that's clear, and Tony's having a good time.
Yes.
Bill's having a good time.
You know, and people in the 20s were also having a good time reading this book because of how often it was printed. So I guess Wait,
I have a question. So the girl that Mark and Kaylee were in love with, what's her name?
Angela,
did you get the vibe that Tony was gonna go start dating Angela? Because that was the vibe I got, that they were gonna become a couple. Okay, well, that's my headcanon of it.
Yeah, I was a little, I don't know. I don't ship Tony and Bill, but I felt like they had a little bit of a thing going, even though I know Bill was in love with another girl.
Right.
But I don't know. They have a thing. I don't know what the thing is, but there is a thing.
Bill was really excited that they were gonna share a bed.
So excited. He was so excited, and he really loved when Tony would like give him compliments, and he like came alive. Like, this is all that matters in the world is me and Tony. I mean,
he literally says that. You underlined it. I underlined it. He's literally like, this is life. This is what living feels like. Like he bloomed in front of this man.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Milne did say specifically that he didn't feel like a mystery needed to be muddied with a romance. So he would not have loved Trent, whose whole thing was the romance. Like, I don't think he would have cared as much if he hadn't been in love with what's her face, Mabel. But like, I kind of feel like that's maybe what I needed to be a little more invested in the story, is if there were a woman who had some sort of stake in the mystery.
Yeah. If there was anyone who had a stake in the mystery.
Anyone at all that like we could care about as a human.
If they if someone was super close with Mark and loved him and was like worried about him, like we gotta find him, we gotta figure out where he is. Everyone was just like, well, he probably accidentally shot him and then like freaked out and ran. So
yeah,
you know, that's Mark for you. Like, okay.
Yeah.
And
So
it didn't feel like there was like a dangerous killer on the loose, or like if they were like Mark is a danger to this community because he was a cold-blooded killer, then like maybe too that could have helped. But it was like no one else seemed to be in danger. And no one cared. So it was
I feel like the whole point of this story is just the mystery itself. Like we are just supposed to be following along. We're supposed to be just as excited about solving this puzzle as Tony and Bill are.
I wasn't.
And I'm like, I just don't care.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm not from the 20s. This doesn't really do anything for me.
No.
I would have appreciated a female character that had a thing to do.
I agree.
I think it could have been fun if Tony, instead of being Tony, were Antonia, and maybe Antonia and Bill had a thing. Or
that would have been good. That would have been really good.
If, we switch out Bill and that becomes Bella, and Bella's the fun character who's just kind of doing whatever.
And Anthony and Bill were just canonically gay and in love.
Yeah,
like that could have worked too. But it was the 1920s.
Give me something.
Yeah, so this line, this is, Bill looked up and nodded eagerly. He had forgotten golf and Betty, his love, and all other things which had made up his world lately. This was the real thing. This was life. That man is clearly in love with Tony.
He's having the best time, and he just didn't know. He had no idea. I did think there were so many parts in the book that were just very funny to me. Yeah. There is a part where Tony is talking to Mrs. Norris, and she keeps talking about how handsome Mark is, and Tony keeps repeating, "I've never seen him." No, I've never seen. And Tony said again, "I've never seen him." And like it just like he does it 2 or 3 times, and I was like, this is it's very like subtly funny in so many places. And I just feel like if it had been a little bit, like if it had leaned a little bit more into like a Clue the movie kind of zaniness, that would have been fun.
I agree.
But it didn't quite get there.
I liked this line a lot. His idea of seeing the world was to see not countries, but people, and to see them from as many angles as possible. And I feel like that really sums up Tony's character. He just is a collector of people, it seems, and like really attuned to what they're doing. I didn't have great love for him. I do think there were some funny lines. I underlined actually quite a bit because I thought lines were funny or kind of insightful. I hope everyone's enjoying my book ASMR as I flip through these pages. There's just like a lot of lines that did stand out to me, so we'll post some of them.
Most of them did not stand out to me. I was just kind of going through and feeling like, well, it's just everything that I think is going to happen just happened. So
I feel like when I make the murder board, I should put this quote. This is about his wonderfully retentive mind, as they called it. And like today we would call that an eidetic memory. We would call it an eidetic memory. But it says, everything which he saw or heard seemed to make its corresponding impression somewhere in his brain, often without his being conscious of it. And these photographic impressions were always there, ready for him when he wished to develop them. And I can just see Shawn Spencer sitting in that diner and his father asking him to close his eyes. And he's like, how many hats? And, like, it's not like Shawn had counted the hats, but he closes his eyes and he can rebuild that scene. And we see Tony do that several times. Like, we see him just kind of rebuild a scene in his mind. He does it with the stairs. Like, I can tell you how many stairs there are.
Yeah. There's a part where he and Bill are, like, just kind of looking through the office and everything. And he's like, okay, we need to retrace our steps. And then he remembers that there's something weird about what Kaylee did because of the way that the shadows fell and the fact that he didn't hear the door shut. And all of these things that he hadn't thought about before. I
feel like if you haven't watched Psych, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. So this podcast is only for fans of Psych. We should really rename it. 100 Years of Psych. Or 100 Years of Murder through the lens of Psych. A critical study. We can really build into that. But in Psych, the TV show, there are moments where, like, the music changes and they kind of, like, zoom in on different aspects of the crime. And then as Shawn sees it, you can kind of solve it with Shawn. That's what this book is like.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't know that the shadow on the wall was weird
Until Tony tells
goes
us.
back
Yeah.
and is like, okay, we're going to zoom in on the shadow on the wall and like tells us why it was weird. So it's not that you can solve it ahead of time. Like, you can get where you and I got. Kaylee did it. But that's like the first thing in the book. There's only ever one suspect. That's the crazy part to me.
Yeah. No, like, according to, I keep wanting to call him Shawn. According to Tony, there's only ever been one suspect. Like, he never believed that Mark was the murderer.
I feel like we always, in a mystery, at least in the mysteries that I've read, we have several different people who it could be. In this book, figuring out who killed Robert, we are only ever presented with two suspects, Mark or Kaylee. There is no third party. I watched an Agatha Christie play once called The Spider's Web, and there's also like a golf party in that play, and they all go off to play golf, and then one of them kind of like sneaks back during lunch and does the murder. And so at first when I was reading this, I was like, oh, I wonder if we're going to find out that someone had lunch.
I also was like, it's got to be one of the house guests, because they're the only ones that were given like a solid alibi in the beginning. So surely one of them like came back at some point, and because they do this whole thing about we're going to stay and play an extra 9 holes and all of that stuff that turned out to be completely irrelevant and did not matter.
A red herring, you could say, except that they're never really... Yeah, they were never really set up as suspects.
Yeah, they're never, like, it's like they're red herrings, but they're not meant to detract from the mystery. It's because A.A. Milne, for some reason, felt like this was important for us to know.
Maybe it's one of those serialized story things again.
It is. Again, I think probably, I feel like that. I'm very excited for when we get away from the serialized stories and start getting complete narratives.
I think it makes a lot of older books like this very hard to read because they include so much information that's absolutely irrelevant. Because if anyone who's listening has ever tried to write a book, you just write whatever. And like at the end, when you're done writing that first draft, that's when you go through and you clean up and you make sure all of the plots connect and you take out the plots that ended up not mattering. But with these serialized
fan
stories,
fiction. It's like Wattpad or AO3. If you've read anything on Wattpad or AO3, you know that sometimes the stories can get away from the authors and they just sort of wander around and do whatever. And so when these authors eventually take these stories and have to turn them into full novels, it takes a really powerful editor to make it worthwhile. And sometimes the powerful editor never manifests and the novel's just bad. And if you're wondering if I am once again poking at E.L. James, you're right. You're right. And I will forever.
I read E.L. James back in the day.
I've never read her. I've only read things about her. And I have decided through all the things I've read about her that I hate her. So
Did you ever watch that Lindsay Ellis video about Stephanie Myers? And then Stephanie Myers talks about E.L. James, and she does it with such grace. I think that's really impressive. Because if someone did that to my story, I would have no grace. No grace to give.
This is a little bit of a side note, but I was kind of frustrated with the way that the community kind of reacted to Lindsay Ellis acknowledging that, hey, Stephanie Meyer did a good thing here. Because it feels like people that we disagree with are not allowed to ever be right about anything ever. And so because Stephanie Meyer has done some questionable things, they decided that the fact that she did this one thing with grace and that Lindsay acknowledged that she did this one thing with grace, that just doesn't matter. You're not allowed to like anything about her if you dislike this one thing about her. And I find that very frustrating. It kind of goes into that high conflict thing where we make a person our enemy and everything they say is completely worthless garbage, and we never ever seek to kind of understand them as a whole person. Right. You know?
The nuance is lost.
Yeah.
And it's really a problem, I think, of the internet age. You can't have nuance on the internet. I don't keep up with what Stephanie Myers is doing. I'm sure she said some pretty questionable shit, but I don't know because I don't keep up with her. Okay, we need to discuss our questions. We talked about the summary. Okay, what can we learn from this murder about how to commit murder? I would say actually that this was a pretty good crime.
It was.
I don't think there were super big mistakes.
feel like the only problem, like Kaylee would have gotten away with it fully if it weren't for Tony being there.
Right. So in a lot of cases, we've talked about like what could the criminal have done better? And then like what was special about this detective? I think this is our first story where it's like, no, the criminal did it right. Like the criminal, good job. We can't learn anything from you because we have what? Don't
leave your goods. Don't leave your goods in a second location and get them out of your control. You got to keep those under wraps.
Yeah. Keep your goods in your control.
Right. And you need to don't go overboard. You need to keep it within your realm of control. Like don't shoot yourself.
Sorry, that's so crazy. Okay,
like
so
the attempted suicide was too far, Sigsbee. It was too far.
So, Kaylee, I think, set up I guess you could argue he shouldn't have told Mrs. Norris about the passageway. Because if he had kept that secret passageway fully under wraps, I think we might have...
I don't think it mattered. Well, I guess the ghost thing, but the ghost thing was sort of the catalyst for him dressing up as Robert in the first place. So he wouldn't have done that if he didn't have need to get back at Mrs. Norris. Yeah. I don't know that was a flaw. And the fact that he sends her away immediately tells me that he's trying to make sure that, nobody's going to find this out. Right. Although it does kind of feel like maybe she might have eventually stepped in and said, hey, by the way, there is a secret passageway. Just FYI. But, that we don't need that because Tony figures it out and finds all of the secrets and whatever. I feel like he seems to be a little bit flustered when Tony arrives. And so it feels to me that he should have been a little more prepared. Like he should have been more prepared for after the actual deed is done. So how are you going to fully set it up? Just in case, because the servants could have come in. Yeah. There were so many people that could have interrupted. Like the people could have come back from golf suddenly. So it feels like he didn't have a contingency plan in place for in case somebody showed up unexpectedly. But then he does kind of put on this big show of let me in, where it seems to suggest that he does expect people to be listening in. So why didn't you already have it set up where, footprints in the flower beds and the bushes are messed up from somebody climbing out the windows?
One of the things he says is that he had forgotten to open the window. And that was one of the reasons he was flustered, because he had forgotten to open this window.
So there's his flaw, is make sure that you make your checklist and check it twice.
And then burn it. So, yeah, make sure that you follow through with all of the details of your plan. But honestly... If a different person had shown up, if it wasn't this detective, I still think he would have gotten away with it.
Yeah, I do think that Tony was the major flaw. He could have had it all set up and ready to go and just been really fully, because clearly the police didn't really care much about anything. No. If it hadn't been for Tony having the eidetic memory and being really interested in the case and being free as a bird to be able to just stay and hadn't happened to want to come see his good friend Bill. Yeah. I think Tony was the flaw in the plan.
And it was the fact that Tony has this eidetic memory. And if he didn't have that, he couldn't have solved it. Yeah. Because there are so many things that rely specifically on remembering that the keys were outside of the doors, even though that wasn't something he noticed when he came in, just being able to rebuild the scene.
Right. I do remember thinking when he does the whole thing about the keys and tells Kaylee, hey, we need to check all the keys. I'm like, Kaylee's going to move the keys, my guy. But then he's like, yeah, that's what I expected. And he's just relying on his memory. And it's more of a test for Kaylee to see if Kaylee does mess around with the keys. Or does he just leave them be? So I was like, okay, I guess.
The fact that he was able to rebuild those keys, not every detective would have done that. And I think, if I had run in off the side of the street and there'd been, a gun and, we're trying to get into a room, I wouldn't have noticed that stuff. I don't think most people would be looking around. And then the whole thing with the window, knowing that the window was open. So Kaylee had forgotten to open a window. That was his like main flaw. So he takes what's his face? Tony, the long way around the room so that they miss one of the windows. And then Kaylee opens that window while Tony is looking at the body. He's like, I'm going to go get some water. And then he like leaves. And while he's like doing that, he opens the window, a different window than the one he planned, but a window. And that's why there's no like broken shrubs or footprints too, because it was the wrong window. That was not the window he had planned to open. If Tony hadn't been able to close his eyes and remember the exact pattern of the shadow of the door going across the room, like there's no way. Yeah. There's just no way, you know?
So it does kind of that whole thing about how, well, the reader's supposed to be able to just put themselves in the feet of the detective. We can't do that because we could not have done this if we did not also have that type of memory.
Which I don't.
Yeah, I don't either.
Man, what a life if you did.
I feel like I would have too many things in my brain, and that would make me want to explode.
I sometimes feel that way anyways.
Right. So I guess that answers the question of why this detective. It's because he has the eidetic memory, because he has the time, and the inclination. Those three things are what help him solve this case.
He's very similar to Trent in that he's solving it just because he likes a puzzle. And this is fun. Unlike our first person whose name I deleted from my brain, Mary Roberts Reinhardt's detective.
Rachel. Her name was Rachel.
Oh my God. That's why I deleted it. I didn't want to be associated with her. Unlike Rachel, who feels like she has to solve it because she's the only one. I don't even know what Rachel's motivation was.
I feel like she was just bothered by it, and she felt like nobody else was doing what they needed to do. So, like, if I don't do it, no one else will. Even though you did have a perfectly capable detective working on it, it takes time.
Who solved more than her?
Yeah, it takes time, Rachel. So, back off.
There is a detective in this story. He doesn't figure it out, but how could he? He is not a part of this story at all. Basically, like Trent's last case, he's kind of introduced and then just gone.
Disappears.
So, this one you can solve more. So, we are moving towards the solving.
But there's also details that you get right at the end that you just could not get before. So similar to the fact that Mr. Couples went on that midnight walk.
Yeah.
We could not have known that Mark was into Angela. Was that her name? Yeah, Angela. We didn't know that Mark was into Angela. So that was important. We didn't know that he was an alcoholic and that you know, Kaylee had that specific beef with him. And also the thing about Kaylee's brother. We did not know these things.
We didn't know that he loved acting and threw himself into the role so fully that he, you know, was like Jared Leto in The Joker, you know?
Yeah. So, like, those were all details that really
should we cast Mark as Jared Leto? Bobby and I were talking about how we're not big on pop culture.
Right.
So it's really hard for us to cast books, but we're going to make an effort. And I think we should throw out Jared Leto as a person for Mark.
You know what I would like to do just to fulfill my own personal whimsy? Which 80s member is 80s in this book?
Is 80s in this book? I could see a little bit of Yunho and Tony.
I was just thinking that I could see some Yunho and Tony,
and then Mingy's Bill. That's fun.
That would be kind of fun. I don't know. I feel like I'm thinking about Mr. Cayley. Who's my dark and brooding Mr. Cayley, who is apparently not handsome. They just really want us to know that he's not handsome. Like, he sounds handsome to me.
They call him
the way
ugly
you describe
so many
him.
times. It's like, okay.
I could see, you know, as, what's his face? Tony. Mingy as Bill. That'd be fun.
I think that would be fun. I think that would be a good vibe. And then, you know, in our casting that everyone else cares about, we'll put Jared Leto as Mark.
So I'm looking at my matrix.
Yes, let's get into our matrix.
So I feel like on the
I want to say, by the time we get this episode up, we have our matrix. We have our words. We've done it. We've finally done it. I was listening to Trent's last case and very upset. I messaged Bobby. I was like, we can't not have our matrix finalized by next episode. It has to be done. It is done. We can officially put it up. So we'll put it up on Instagram and on our Patreon.
So on the headline, I feel like I'm wanting to put it at forgettable. I do feel like I'm going to walk away from this and just be like, wait, what? What was that about? It's for sure not anything. It's not interesting. It does not approach interesting.
No.
The best I could give it is that it exists.
That's where I'm putting it. This book exists. So
I do feel like the fact that the characters are at least kind of fun might bump it up from forgettable to exist. I might remember the Shawn Spencerification of Tony Gillingham. That might stick with me. So I don't know that it will be fully forgettable.
My ranking is it exists and it was amusing.
I don't know that I'm... Maybe?
It's the Shawn Spencerification of Tony that gets it to amusing.
Also, the whole, this is life. This is what it is to live. That over-dramaticness. Yeah, I think I agree with your ranking. I think the fact that it is amusing keeps it from being completely forgettable.
I think that was my thought. It also has some other things going for it that makes it less forgettable that have nothing to do with the writing, actually. The fact that it was written by the author of Winnie the Pooh, that is standing in its favor, despite it having nothing to do with the actual writing. It was super breezy to read, which I've said a couple of times, but it was I sat down to read it and it just goes super, super fast.
Yeah, I read it all yesterday. Almost all of it. I think I read a couple chapters before, but I just sat down yesterday morning and then I was finished by lunch.
I read it Friday and Saturday, but it was just a couple hours on Friday and then on Saturday a couple hours in the morning. So it was very, very quick.
Okay, so our one sentence recommendation.
Okay, I like it when we build it together, so I'll start. Read this book if you love cozy mysteries. It's very cozy.
Read this book if you love cozy mysteries, but you don't want to care about the characters.
In general, do you think you would recommend this book to anyone?
I think I might, if you're a diehard A.A. Milne stan, and you just didn't know that he wrote a mystery. I do think it's a little bit charming that people have talked about how, this is maybe how Christopher Robin grew up with the sort of man that he became. And I'm like, that tracks. That makes sense to me. So I think I would only recommend it to that very small, if somebody is a lover of mysteries, I don't think this would do anything for them.
So maybe read this book if you're a fan of Winnie the Pooh and are interested in a cozy mystery.
But again, you don't want to care about the characters. I cannot stress this enough. If you are somebody where the character is extremely important, which I am one of those people. I need to be attached to at least a character in the story in order for me to like the story.
So read this book if you are a fan of Winnie the Pooh and cozy mysteries, but don't need to be attached to any of the characters.
Yeah.
It exists and it's mildly amusing. I mean, for me, it was somewhere between forgettable and exists, but...
Yeah, but we don't have shades of gray here, so it's just... exists is acceptable to me. So this is a amusing book that exists.
Don't read it if you want to be challenged.
Yeah, for sure. If
you want to be challenged, read The Circular Staircase because it will challenge you.
It will challenge you in ways that you did not know that you needed to be challenged.
That's why the line isn't a challenge line.
I would like to throw out a legitimately good mystery, just as a counterbalance to this one, which was just all cozy vibes and having a good time. if you want a solid mystery that you can sort of figure out as you go, that's told from multiple perspectives, that really kind of originated the genre, you need to read The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. It is a beast of a book. It is real thick. There's a lot going on, but it is so interesting and so engaging, and you will care about the characters, and you get a very interesting detective. You get a lot of different perspectives. It's very, very good. Highly recommend. So there's my recommendation. Also, can we give the Red House Mystery its flowers in that we did not have to visit Racism Corner today?
Oh my God, yes.
Hey, Milne, you did it. You did it. We're so proud of you.
It's, yeah. It was great. No racism jump scares. I didn't get to page 220 and all of a sudden. So that was
singing a real racist song. I mean, I guess you could say they're a little bit weird about Australians.
They are weird about Australians.
They're a little bit prejudiced about Australians. So that's something to maybe, if you're from Australia, maybe this one's not for you. I don't know.
I mean, I guess that is also very true to the time period, because there was a period where they did just send criminals to Australia. Like, that's what London did. They just...
they really thought that was going to turn out okay. That seems weird.
They just packed them up. And it's kind of like how in Hawaii they sent, all the people with leprosy to Molokai. You just took the people that they couldn't deal with and just put them somewhere else. So there's all sorts of other issues with that, obviously. But yeah, no racism corner for us. That's great. Any other thoughts about this book?
I don't think so. I do think it was weird it was called The Red House Mystery, considering that it had very little to do with the house, except for maybe the secret passageway. But, if it's called The Red House Mystery, you sort of expect the house to be, like, a presence. And I didn't feel like it was very much of a presence.
The house wasn't really a presence, except that everyone called it the Red House. And it seemed like everyone knew, like, yes, that's the Red House. That's Mark's house. Everyone knew where Mark's house was. But they only said the Red House like 3 or 4 times. And it was like each time we met a new character, they were like, yes, the Red House. It's over there. But I mean, I wouldn't say it was a great name. I did get this book for $1.75. So that was nice.
I think mine was like $3. I got mine used. It has a nice stain on the back of it, so that's cool.
My dog Daisy loves books, so mine has these little dog bite marks. She ate the corner off. And then there's just a nice section of pages that have a huge big hole in them. So
Daisy always an agent of chaos.
So should we get into what we've been reading?
Right. What have you been reading these days?
I just finished the 3rd Gilmore, which I can't remember if I talked about it.
You did.
I don't think so. Did I?
You did, because I remember.
On this podcast.
Yeah.
Because I just started reading it last week. How could I have talked about it on this podcast?
Well, you talked about it on the last Penny episode that we did, because you were just starting to read it.
I see.
Because we had a conversation. Because I remember I was like, I don't know what she's talking about. Because I thought you meant the 3rd Gilmore, as in the author last name was Gilmore. And I was like, I don't know am I supposed to know who that is? And then
no, from the Gilmore Girls. Well, I just finished it yesterday, and it was pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot, so I would recommend it if you are a fan of memoirs. It was a pretty good one, and I enjoyed listening to it as an audiobook because Kelly Bishop narrated it. I have finished my Penny book for the next Pennyverse episode, Love Hacked.
I've just started reading it.
Spoilers, I loved it. I loved it so much.
I'm only a few chapters in, and it's already so kooky. It's real wacky, and I'm like, I don't know where this is going, but it seems like a good time.
Yeah, I mean, it keeps that kind of super crazy vibe. I think we talked about it in Friends with Benefits episode that like the story got kind of progressively crazier, and then by the end it's like, oh, okay, so this is a romp.
This is just what we're doing. Okay.
But it doesn't feel like that at the start. It doesn't start out like that. This one starts that and just like keeps it. It starts with romp, keeps romp. It's a fun time. I have not bought Neanderthal Seeks Human and Friends with Benefit or Friends Without Benefits in like a physical copy. I read them from my library, but I like love text so much that I was like, I should buy a physical copy so I can just kind of keep it on my desk. So I think that's going to be a really fun episode. So just is that coming out? No, good. I was like, that's not coming out before this episode, right?
Exactly this one. Yeah.
Good. So everyone get excited about that. I wanted to read the Happily Ever After playlist with you. Because we're supposed to be reading it this month, but my library didn't have it. So I was like, well, I'll just read a different Abby Jimenez book. And so I got Just for the Summer, and it is delightful. I'm only a little bit into it, but I absolutely adore it. So
well,
that's what I've been reading.
I am still reading Happy Ever After playlist. I'm only a couple chapters in because as y'all know, I read multiple books at the same time. I recently finished Tex by S.E. Hinton, and I just really got to say, S.E. Hinton peaked with The Outsiders. And I hate to say that because she kind of gets tired of people asking her about The Outsiders all the time. But I've read That Was Then, This Is Now. I read Tex, and I read Rumblefish. And the thing about all of these stories is they just kind of wander. They're just wandering. And I don't love this. Tex was better. Tex felt like she had more of like a structure or something she was trying to. She always has something to say. I do want to make that clear. She's got something to say. I just don't know how much it would translate for like a middle schooler or young adult brain to kind of figure out what she's trying to say. But Tex was good, managed to not be fully tragic, so that's always fun. I also I know that I've been saying that I've been reading Legendary by Stephanie Garber. I was not reading Legendary, I was reading Finale. I've already read Legendary. So I finished Finale finally, and here's the thing: I really wish the whole reason I read the Caraval series is because I read the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, which, as it turns out, is a sequel to the Caraval series. And if I had read Caraval series first and then Once Upon a Broken Heart, I would have probably really liked Caraval. But since I read Once Upon a Broken Heart first, Caraval was just not scratching that particular itch, and the male main character from Once Upon a Broken Heart is a kind of side main character in the Caraval series, and he has a rough time in the Caraval series, and I'm like, I don't love this for me. This isn't working. So it just took me forever to read it because I was just never super engaged with it. But it was Friday. It was yesterday. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Recently, I was like, I can't be reading this book anymore. I have to finish it. So I just sat down and just zipped through all the rest of it. So I finished.
Congratulations, you've done it.
Yes, I've done it. So I have started reading The Wedding People by someone, and I understand that the main character really has depression, clearly some mental health issues, but it is a bad time. I'm not having a good time with that book, but I am going to finish it because I got it from my library. I'm also reading Love Hacked, the third penny that we were just talking about. I am reading the Happy Ever After playlist, which is also a good time. It's it's a very cozy sort of romance, a long distance kind of thing where the two people get to know each other over text before they ever meet.
That's interesting because the Just for the Summer is similar. They get to know each other on the phone. Maybe that's
Abby's thing. What happens is I cannot remember her name because I can never remember names, but the main character, her husband died a couple years ago, and she's been in depression mourning for years now, and is really just now trying to get her life back together. And this dog just jumps through her, like is running in traffic and jumps through her sunroof, and she's like, who belongs to this dog? And so the owner of the dog is a man who is in like an indie band, and he's doing like a movie thing in Australia, and he had left his sort of friends with benefits kind of girl in charge of watching the dog, but she had gotten called to New York, and so she doesn't get a sitter for the dog. She just like abandons the dog for weeks.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the dog has escaped. He's a little bit emaciated. kid. He's got like a urinary tract infection. And the girl like really feels like the guy has like, she thinks he's abandoned the dog. And so she's super upset with him. And she's like, I'm not giving the dog back. The dog is mine now. So she like falls in love with the dog. And then he's like, wait, no. I promise I'm in Australia. I had somebody watching him, and he gets super mad at the girl that like ditched the dog. And I'm like, I would murder her. Like, I would take everything that I've learned from this series and I would murder her, like, straight up. Anyway, so they start just like texting back and forth, and she's kind of being very cagey about telling him who she is, and he's being very forthcoming, and they're just like flirting and having a good time. And so they're where I am right now, they're still in the talking stage, but it's just so like cozy and just fun and chill, and it's a very like nice little mental release. And then finally, I am reading For She Is Wrath by Emily Varga, which is a retelling of The Count of Monte Cristo, but in Pakistan.
Oh, fun.
Mm-hmm. And with a female main character.
I feel like I read a Count of Monte Cristo retelling.
You did, because you gave it to me.
You're welcome.
And it wasn't this one. It was a different one.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't that one. I thought the one I read was Only Fine. So I
also thought it was Only Fine. I was like, well, that was okay.
There was a sequel, and I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't even find it super amusing. I didn't really like the characters, so I was kind of like, eh. But there's a sequel, and I am choosing not to read it.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was a sequel.
I would bother to look up the title, but I don't think anyone else should read it, so don't. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna gatekeep.
All right, we'll be back in a month.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with Love Hacked.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with Love Hack.
And
it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, and in a month we will be back with, the next one is the Raymond Chandler.
The Big Sleep. Is it The Big Sleep?
I'm fairly certain. I could look it up.
Well, maybe we should end with like actually knowing what the book is, because it will be very embarrassing if I have to like put a note in the text. It's like, we say it's The Big Sleep.
It is The Big Sleep. The Big Sleep is up next by Raymond Chandler. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoy, please subscribe to the podcast and also leave us a review.
If you have any questions for us, you can email us at readersoftheLostArtPod@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Blue Sky at ReadersPod and on Instagram and Threads at ReadersOfTheLostArtPod.
If you would like to hear more from us, you can receive our free weekly newsletter by joining our Patreon, Readers of the Lost Art. It will have news, behind-the-scenes content, and our reading books.
We'll see you next time. Be the light.